Let me tell you something bold, something most people are too afraid to say out loud. Being alone is not a weakness. It is not a curse. It is not something to be feared or fixed. Being alone is a power. The world has trained us to believe that solitude equals sadness, that silence means something's wrong. We are told that if we're not surrounded by noise, attention, likes, followers, or people, then we're losing. But that's a lie. A bold-faced lie. The truth is, your greatest power lies in the moments when no one is watching, when no one is texting back, when the room is quiet, and it's just you. That's when the real work begins. When you are alone, you face the most honest version of yourself. No filters. No performance. Just raw, unfiltered truth. And it's in that solitude that you discover your strength. Not because someone else says so, but because you earn it. You learn to protect yourself. You learn to motivate yourself. You learn to hold yourself accountable. You learn to walk through the fire without a hand to hold. That kind of strength, it doesn't come from crowds. It comes from courage, and it's forged in silence. Think about it. Every warrior trains alone before they enter the arena. Every elite mind studies in silence before they lead. Every strong soul has walked through the dark before they ever stood in the light. So if you find yourself alone today, don't run from it. Don't numb it. Don't scroll it away. Sit in it. Feel it. Own it. Solitude gives you clarity. It strips away the noise. And what's left is something real. You. When you know how to stand alone, no one can break you. When you know how to sit with your pain, no one can manipulate you. When you know how to carry your own weight, no one can control you. This world will try to distract you, dilute you, and make you doubt yourself. But when you build yourself alone, they can't touch you. They can't define you. They can't destroy you. Because your foundation wasn't built on their approval. It was built in the fire of your own discipline, your own grit, your own resilience. So the next time someone says, "You're always by yourself," smile. Thank them. Because you're not lonely, you're building. You're not isolated, you're ascending. You're not missing out, you're leveling up. Now here's your call to action. Stop waiting for someone else to show up and save you. You are not a victim, you are a force. Start waking up earlier. Start saying no more often. Start doing the things you keep avoiding. Not for applause, not for praise, but for the warrior you're becoming. Stand tall, stand strong, stand alone if you must. But don't ever shrink, because the ones who walk alone are the ones who blaze the trail. And if you've got the courage to walk that road, no one can stop you. Now go, be that storm, be that force, be that power. Because being alone, that's where legends are born. When you're alone, there's no one left to impress, no one to perform for, no audience applauding or judging. It's just you and the silence. And in that silence, something powerful begins to happen. The layers start to peel back. The masks we wear for the world fall away. What's left isn't weakness, it's raw, unfiltered truth. That's when you begin to really see what you're made of. The distractions are gone, the noise is gone, and what remains is your most honest reflection. It's not always comfortable, but it's always real. When you sit in solitude, your mind starts to surface the things you've buried under business. Old fears, quiet dreams, hard truths. Solitude has a way of confronting you with everything you've been avoiding. And that's why most people run from it. They drown it out with people, screens, noise, anything to avoid being alone with themselves. But if you stay, if you sit with it, you'll discover that what you feared wasn't the solitude. It was your own power waiting to be unlocked. Solitude forces you to become resourceful. When there's no one else around, you can't rely on someone else to solve your problems. You begin to tap into your inner grit, your inner fire. You make decisions for yourself, not based on what others think, but based on what's right for you. You stop outsourcing your confidence and start generating it from within. That's strength. That's independence. It doesn't come from being surrounded by people. It comes from proving to yourself that you can stand on your own. In solitude, you start to hear your own voice again. Not the voice the world told you to have, but your voice. The one that tells you what you believe, what you want, and what matters to you. The more time you spend alone, the louder that voice becomes. And as that voice grows stronger, so do you. You begin to make choices that align with who you truly are, not who you're pretending to be for others. That clarity, that alignment, is one of the most powerful strengths a person can develop. Being alone also gives you time to heal. There's a kind of emotional surgery that can only happen in silence. You process things you didn't know you were still carrying. You allow wounds to finally close. You realize how much energy you've been giving away to things and people that never deserved it. And as you pull that energy back into yourself, you begin to rebuild. Piece by piece, stronger, wiser, sharper. Solitude is not isolation. It is regeneration. It's in the stillness of solitude that you build discipline. There are no shortcuts when you're alone. No one is going to push you. No one is going to pull you. You get up because you decided to. You stay consistent because you committed. That kind of discipline, built in silence, is the foundation of lasting strength. It's not a show. It's not a performance. It's personal. And because it was built alone, no one can take it from you. You also begin to trust yourself more. In the absence of constant feedback from others, you learn to listen to your own instincts. You start making decisions based on inner conviction rather than external approval. You stop waiting for permission to act. You stop second-guessing your worth. That internal trust is what allows you to move through life with unshakable confidence. It's not arrogance. It's ownership. Solitude teaches you resilience. When you endure hard times alone and get back up on your own terms, you build a kind of strength that doesn't crack under pressure. You become mentally bulletproof. You know how to sit with discomfort, face fear, and keep going. You stop panicking when things fall apart, because you've already proven to yourself that you can handle the storm without anyone else's umbrella. There's also a kind of focus that only solitude can give you. Without distractions, without opinions flooding in, your mind sharpens. You zero in on your priorities. You begin to operate with intention. You start creating rather than reacting. You realize how much time you wasted trying to please others, and how much more powerful you are when your energy is focused inward instead of scattered outward. And in all of this, solitude becomes the space where you build your foundation. It's not about being antisocial. It's about being self-aware. When you know who you are in solitude, you stop getting lost in the crowd. You stop chasing things that don't matter. You start building from the inside out. And what you build alone is built to last. Independence doesn't begin with a bold declaration. It begins quietly, in the background of your life, when you start to take responsibility for your own choices. It's in the small, unnoticed decisions, choosing to show up when no one's watching, doing the work without being told, holding yourself to a higher standard simply because you can. That's where inner power begins. It doesn't explode outward. It builds inward, one deliberate action at a time. And it's in those repeated choices, made without applause, that independence becomes a force. When you stop waiting for someone else to take the lead, you start becoming the leader of your own life. That shift is subtle but powerful. You go from reacting to directing, from depending to deciding. You begin to realize that you don't need a map if you trust your internal compass. And the more you lean on yourself, the more capable you become. Each time you rely on your own strength, you add another layer to your foundation. That's how inner power is formed, not through loud declarations, but through quiet, consistent self-reliance. Independence teaches you how to handle failure. Not just survive it, but learn from it, own it, and use it as fuel. When you don't have anyone else to blame, you stop wasting energy deflecting and start investing energy into growth. You learn how to fall and stand back up without someone rushing in to save you. And in those moments, you gain something far more valuable than comfort. You gain resilience. You learn that power doesn't mean never falling. It means knowing how to rise without help. There's also a kind of freedom that comes with independence. Freedom of thought, of action, of choice. When you no longer need to ask for validation, you start to live on your own terms. You stop compromising your values to please others. You stop delaying your goals to fit into someone else's timeline. You start moving with clarity, with intention. Your life stops being a performance and starts becoming a mission. Independence gives you that clarity because it strips away the noise of expectation. Independence sharpens your instincts. Without constant advice, you're forced to listen to yourself. You learn the difference between impulse and intuition. You begin to make better decisions, not because someone guided you, but because you've failed, corrected, and grown. You understand your patterns. You know your strengths and your weaknesses. That self-awareness becomes a weapon. It makes you precise, strategic, confident. Not because others said so, but because you earned it through trial and truth. You also begin to see how much time you used to waste trying to please others. Independence reclaims that time. It redirects your focus. You stop explaining yourself. You stop asking for permission. And when your energy is no longer divided between your mission and their opinions, you move faster. You become efficient, powerful. Because your energy isn't being diluted, it's being channeled. And the more you honor that independence, the more results you begin to see. Being independent doesn't mean being isolated. It means being whole. You stop looking for someone else to complete you, to give you direction, to validate your worth. You begin to realize that everything you need to build the life you want already exists within you. And from that realization comes true confidence. The kind that doesn't shout, the kind that doesn't need to be seen, the kind that simply is, because it was built from the inside out. That inner power shows itself in how you carry yourself. You walk into rooms differently. You speak differently. You move with purpose. People may not be able to define it, but they feel it. That's what independence does. It radiates, not in arrogance but in calm, quiet certainty. You no longer crave attention, because you already have your own. You no longer chase approval, because you already approve of yourself. And in that presence, you become undeniable. There's a transformation that happens when you stop needing and start choosing. You begin to choose people, situations, and environments that align with your purpose. You no longer tolerate things that drain you. You no longer entertain distractions disguised as obligations. You begin to protect your energy, your peace, and your path, not out of fear, but out of power. Independence allows you to make those decisions with strength, not desperation. And the deeper your independence grows, the more untouchable your inner world becomes. External chaos doesn't shake you the same way. You've built something within yourself that doesn't collapse under pressure. You've proven to yourself, again and again, that you can handle life on your own terms. That doesn't make you hardened. It makes you solid. And that solidity, that quiet strength, becomes your greatest weapon. There's a deep misunderstanding that being alone must automatically mean being lonely. But they are not the same. Loneliness is a state of mind. It's the ache for connection that's missing even when you're in a crowded room. Being alone, on the other hand, is a physical condition. One that can be powerful, intentional, and even liberating. People confuse the two because society has trained us to equate constant connection with value. But real connection starts from within, not from noise and numbers. When you learn to be alone and feel whole, you reach a different level of self-mastery. You stop fearing your own presence. You stop needing someone to sit beside you in order to feel valid. You begin to find comfort in your own skin, your own voice, your own silence. That's not loneliness. That's strength. That's presence. That's control. Because once you stop seeing aloneness as a punishment and start viewing it as a tool, it stops holding power over you and starts working for you. Most people surround themselves with others not because they're social, but because they're scared. Scared of what they might hear in the silence. Scared of the thoughts that surface when there's no one to distract them. But the truth is, the strongest people are the ones who can sit in that silence and not flinch. They're the ones who can walk alone without feeling less than. They've trained themselves to enjoy their own company, and that is one of the most underrated superpowers a person can develop. Aloneness gives you space to rediscover what brings you joy, not what's trending, not what your friends enjoy, not what looks good on social media, but what actually makes you feel alive. It strips away the pressure to perform. You don't need to dress it up. You don't need to make it look appealing to anyone else. You do things simply because they fulfill you. That's a level of freedom that's only accessible when you stop relying on others to create your happiness. The idea that solitude equals sadness is a myth. It's a myth fed by a world that profits from your dependence. When you think you need constant company to be happy, you're easier to influence, easier to sell to, easier to manipulate. But when you understand that you are enough on your own, you become sovereign. You stop seeking approval. You stop chasing relationships out of fear. You start choosing them from a place of abundance, not desperation. And that difference changes everything. There's clarity that comes when you're alone. Without other voices shaping your thoughts, your own mind becomes sharper. You begin to question the narratives you've absorbed. You ask yourself what you believe, what you want, and what you stand for. It's a reset. A purification. You begin to operate from your core rather than the chaos around you. And the longer you sit with that clarity, the less influence the world has over your decisions. Being alone gives you full access to your own energy. You're not draining yourself trying to match someone else's pace or mood. You're not adjusting your behavior to make someone else feel comfortable. You're just you, uninterrupted. And in that uninterrupted state, you discover how much more you can do, how much more you can think, how much more space there is to grow. You begin to experience life on your own frequency, and that level of self-awareness becomes a gift. You also start to protect your peace more fiercely. Once you've felt the stillness of true solitude, chaos becomes harder to tolerate. Drama starts to feel like poison. Shallow relationships begin to bore you. You become less tolerant of noise, of energy drains, of anything that pulls you away from your center. And that shift isn't arrogance, it's evolution. You've outgrown the need to be surrounded in order to feel something. You've learned that stillness can feel even more fulfilling. In solitude, your time becomes yours again. You stop living on someone else's clock. You wake up and decide what matters. You build routines that work for you. You listen to your body, your rhythm, your creativity. You stop rushing to meet deadlines that don't belong to you. You create, think, rest, and move in alignment with your own life, not someone else's demands. That independence with your time leads to a deeper sense of fulfillment that external business can't compete with. And over time, being alone stops feeling like a gap and starts feeling like a gift. You begin to see solitude as a space for restoration, reflection, and creation. You stop filling your calendar just to feel significant. You stop equating company with worth. You stop fearing your own thoughts. Instead, you walk with yourself like an old friend, one who knows your scars, your brilliance, your peace. And that bond with self becomes the foundation for everything else you build. Silence has a way of stripping everything down to the truth. In a world overloaded with noise, notifications, opinions, advice, distractions, silence becomes a rare and powerful space. It's in the quiet that you can finally hear what matters. Not what the world wants you to think, but what your instincts are trying to tell you. When everything else fades and only your breath remains, that's where clarity lives. It's not loud, it doesn't compete, it just waits for you to slow down long enough to listen. People often run from silence because it feels uncomfortable. They turn on music, scroll endlessly, fill every second with sound or stimulation because silence feels like confrontation. And it is. But not with the world, it's a confrontation with yourself. In silence, your distractions dissolve. You come face to face with your doubts, your dreams, your failures, your truth. And while that can be difficult, it's also necessary. Because if you never hear your real voice, you'll keep living a life that isn't yours. Silence creates a vacuum where clarity can finally surface. When you step away from the constant flood of input, you make room for original thought. You start recognizing what ideas are truly yours, and which ones were programmed into you. You begin to separate your voice from the noise. It's in silence that you start to reclaim ownership of your mind. You stop mimicking and start thinking, and in that process, you find direction, not because someone handed it to you, but because you uncovered it within yourself. The truth is, clarity doesn't scream. It whispers. And if your life is filled with nonstop noise, you'll miss it every time. Silence isn't empty, it's full of answers. It reveals your real priorities. It shows you what you've been ignoring. It brings forward the conversations you've avoided. It tells you what you need to change, what you need to walk away from, and what you need to start building. You just have to get quiet enough to hear it, and brave enough to act on it. When you make space for silence, you give yourself the gift of reflection. You can finally look at your life and ask, is this working? Am I proud of the person I'm becoming? Am I moving with purpose, or am I just busy? Those aren't questions that can be answered while scrolling or rushing. They require stillness, they require focus. And in silence, those questions become mirrors, not to judge yourself but to see clearly, to recalibrate, to correct the course if needed. Silence also teaches you how to be present. Without sound to distract you, you become more aware of your body, your breath, your surroundings. You begin to notice details, a shift in emotion, a change in mood, a burst of inspiration that you'd normally overlook. That heightened awareness leads to stronger decision-making. You become more intentional with your words, your time, your energy. You're no longer reacting blindly, you're responding with insight. And that insight starts in silence. In silence, you meet your real self, not the version you show the world, not the one shaped by expectations, but the one that exists underneath all of it. That meeting is powerful. It's raw, it's honest, and it's necessary, because when you know who you are without the world's input, you become unshakable. Your confidence comes from truth, not applause. Your identity becomes anchored, not swayed, and clarity becomes a permanent part of how you live, not something you have to chase, but something you carry. Many of the best decisions in life are made in silence. Not because someone gave you a perfect answer, but because you created the mental space to hear your own wisdom. Silence slows you down just enough to see what's real, to feel what's missing, to sense what's coming. It removes the pressure to rush, and replaces it with precision, and that precision becomes your advantage. While others panic and chase, you pause and decide. That pause is your power. Silence also reveals what you've been avoiding. It has a way of uncovering the unfinished business in your life. The conversations you haven't had, the goals you've abandoned, the habits that are quietly destroying your peace. In silence, you can't lie to yourself. You can't hide behind productivity or noise. You have to face the things you'd rather ignore. But in doing that, You reclaim control. You step out of denial and into clarity. And once you see clearly, you can no longer move blindly. That's why silence is not a weakness. It's a strength. It's a tool for realignment. It's where false narratives die and real wisdom begins. It doesn't require effort, just intention. You don't need to retreat from life to find silence. You just need to create space within it. Moments of quiet that belong only to you. And in those moments, you'll find more answers than any external voice could ever give. Because clarity isn't something you find out there. It's something you uncover in here. Self-reliance is not just about doing things on your own. It's about believing that you can. It's a mindset, a lifestyle, a form of freedom that cannot be taken away because it doesn't depend on anyone else. When you become self-reliant, you stop waiting for permission. You stop hoping someone will come rescue you. You realize that everything you need to start, to build, to heal, already lives within you. That understanding alone is life-altering, because it shifts your entire relationship with the world. Most people are taught from an early age to depend on systems, on people, on approval. They're trained to look outward for stability and confidence, as if it can only come from a paycheck, a title, a relationship. But all of that is fragile. If someone else gave it to you, they can also take it away. Self-reliance changes that equation. It's about cultivating the ability to stand strong even when the ground beneath you shifts. It's not arrogance, it's inner security. It's knowing that you will figure it out, not because it's easy, but because you trust yourself to keep going. Self-reliance begins with taking responsibility, not just for your successes, but for your failures, your choices, your growth. It means no more blaming, no more excuses, no more waiting for the right time. It's about ownership. Every decision becomes an act of empowerment. You stop outsourcing your power to others. You stop needing someone else to believe in you before you take action. You move because you've decided that your progress is your priority. And in that choice, you begin to reclaim parts of yourself you didn't even know you lost. It doesn't mean you never ask for help. It doesn't mean you isolate yourself. What it means is that you never need help to the point that you collapse without it. You know how to navigate difficulty. You know how to pivot when the plan falls apart. You've developed internal systems, resilience, creativity, grit, that carry you forward when external systems fail. And that makes you unbreakable in a world that's constantly changing. It gives you the kind of independence that isn't measured by words, but by action. Self-reliance also fuels self-worth. When you've earned your way forward, when you've solved your own problems, faced your own fears, and built your own path, you don't need validation to feel worthy. You already know you are. That worth doesn't waver when someone rejects you, or when a plan doesn't go the way you hoped. Because it's not attached to outcomes, it's rooted in effort. You begin to respect yourself not for what you have, but for what you've survived and what you've created. This kind of freedom shows up in every area of life. In relationships, you stop clinging. You don't choose people out of desperation. You choose them from a place of strength. You're not afraid to walk away from what doesn't serve you, because you know you'll be fine either way. In career, you take risks. You trust your instincts. You step into opportunities others hesitate to touch, because you've trained yourself to navigate uncertainty. You've replaced fear with faith in your own adaptability. There's also a deep peace that comes with self-reliance. You stop obsessing over what others are doing. You're not constantly comparing or competing, because you've built your own lane. You're too focused on your own growth to waste energy on envy. That mental clarity allows you to stay grounded. You don't need to prove anything. You're not chasing status. You're focused on substance. You begin to realize that your ability to stand alone is what sets you apart. Not your resume, not your follower count, not your bank account. It also cultivates resilience. When things go wrong, and they will, you don't crumble. You recalibrate. You analyze, adjust, and move forward. You don't spiral into helplessness. You've already been in the fire and learned how to walk through it. That resilience becomes part of your identity. You know how to rebuild, because you've done it before. And that kind of history with yourself becomes a source of unwavering confidence that no setback can steal. Self-reliance requires discipline. It means doing the hard things when no one is watching. It means keeping promises to yourself. It means showing up even on days when you feel like quitting. That consistency compounds. Over time, it transforms your life. You become someone who others depend on. Not because you're trying to be a savior, but because your steadiness is rare. You've earned it. You didn't get there by chance. You got there by choosing the path of personal accountability, over and over again. Eventually, the world begins to shift around you. You no longer feel trapped by circumstances. You stop fearing rejection. You stop asking, what if it doesn't work? And start saying, I'll handle it if it doesn't. That shift is liberation. It's not that life becomes easier. It's that you become stronger. You stop hoping for easier and start building better. You stop being reactive and start being intentional. And in that space of quiet strength, you become unstoppable. Not because you had all the answers, but because you trusted yourself to find them. Walking alone is where the myth ends and the making begins. It's the quiet march through discomfort, rejection, and doubt that forges a person into something exceptional. The ones who are willing to step forward with no applause, no validation, and no safety net are the ones who transform. While the world celebrates the highlight reels, the legends are built in the background, on the days no one sees, in the moments no one claps, when the only one cheering is the person in the mirror. That solitude is not punishment, it's preparation. When you walk alone, you stop waiting for others to believe in your vision. You stop needing a crowd to confirm your direction. You begin to build with what you have, where you are, exactly as you are. There's a raw purity in that. It strips away the performance, the need to impress, and forces you to confront your real drive. What's left is not image, it's intention. And that kind of fuel doesn't burn out because it isn't borrowed. It's born from the inside. Every great leader, every innovator, every revolutionary has experienced that walk. Not just physically, but emotionally. The path of change, of growth, of transformation, isn't crowded, because most people won't walk a road unless it's paved, popular, or guaranteed. But the ones who do, they become the blueprint. They build something from nothing and give others the courage to do the same. Their solitude becomes a symbol, not of isolation, but of courage, of commitment, of creation. There's a brutal honesty that comes with walking alone. No one to blame, no one to hide behind. Every success and every mistake is yours. And while that may sound intimidating, it's also incredibly liberating. You become responsible for your life in the deepest way. That responsibility sharpens you. You start paying attention. You start learning faster. You start making choices with intention, because every step is yours. That awareness builds strength. Not just physical or mental, but emotional, spiritual, and strategic strength. When you walk alone, you develop a level of self-trust that can't be taught. You begin to realize that you can handle more than you thought, that the voice inside you, the one that whispers when the world is loud, is wiser than you gave it credit for. Every decision you make, every fear you face, every challenge you endure becomes evidence. And with enough evidence, belief is no longer optional. It's inevitable. You begin to believe in yourself not because someone told you to, but because you've seen what you're capable of firsthand. That solo path isn't glamorous. It doesn't come with instant rewards. It often includes long nights, hard questions, and moments of deep doubt. But in those moments, something unshakable is being formed. You're building patience, focus, and resilience. You're learning how to keep going when comfort isn't present. And those traits become armor. They don't just prepare you for one goal. They prepare you for life. Because once you've learned how to move alone, nothing and no one can control your direction. You also become more discerning. You stop saying yes out of fear. You stop surrounding yourself with people who drain your energy, just to avoid being alone. You recognize that solitude is sacred. It's where ideas are born, plans are mapped, and clarity is refined. So when you do allow others in, it's from a place of strength, not need. And that shift changes everything. Your circle becomes tighter, your focus sharper, and your path more defined. There's also a fire that develops when you walk alone. Not a fire fueled by anger or bitterness, but by purpose. You begin to understand that your time is finite, your gifts are rare, and your mission matters. That urgency wakes something up inside you. It pushes you to keep building even when progress is slow. It reminds you that just because no one sees your work now doesn't mean it's not working. That silent grind becomes a sacred ritual. You show up for yourself, over and over again. And that consistency becomes your legacy. History remembers the ones who walked alone first. The ones who dared to speak, to create, to move without consensus. They didn't wait for the world to get ready. They acted, and in doing so they made the world ready. Walking alone isn't about isolation. It's about initiation. It's a rite of passage that separates the dreamers from the doers. The ones who want attention from the ones who want impact. And that walk demands everything. But in return, it gives you something far more valuable than comfort. It gives you transformation. You start to realize that the longer you walk alone, the less you need the noise. You're no longer tempted by shortcuts, applause, or trends. You become addicted to mastery, not popularity, and that discipline becomes your superpower. You may not get there fast, you may not get there with company, but you'll get there built, not bought, proven, not promoted, and that kind of arrival, that's what builds legends.